Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I know I'll be coming on this evening for the Rebecca Lynn Pope Show live, answering the Q&As that you guys have sent into me in the emails. If you have questions, make sure you send emails to live@RebeccaLynnPope.com. Also, remember, I've got a brand new Divine Dating workshop coming up. The link is in my bio. For those of you who are interested in learning how to date in spiritual alignment, intuitively, in order to date for true love and for marriage. My Divine Dating workshop is actually, the wait list is open. Get on there, making sure you're able to get the information as soon as enrollment opens. So make sure you get on that list, okay? The link is in my bio. Coming on really quickly, I'm going to do this in a couple of parts. Taryn says, I need to be in all the classes, sweetheart. Listen, guys, I've taken a lot of classes, studied so much. I was working on my master's in therapy when I started coaching full-time. My coaching career took off, and so I literally have half of a master's in therapy. And I study. I take courses. I take other people's courses. I read books. I believe in self-development. I believe in personal development. I believe in self-improvement. I believe in self-awareness. You guys know this. I know I have a lot of new followers on my channel. So, make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers over on YouTube. So excited. Thank you so much. So this message I'm going to do in maybe 2 or 3 parts, because the subject, there's so much to unpack. I got an email in response from a follower on my email list like yesterday. And she wrote an email in response to my video about how I got married at 35 plus. And she was expressing her frustration with, obviously, women, being accountable to do so much work, so much healing work, investing in so much to work at learning how to date, learning how to position themselves. But one of the things she expressed in this email, guys, is she said, Rebecca, I feel like we can't afford to ignore the fact that Christian women, church girls, good girls who've been raised as women of faith, women of God, or in the church, or raised by people who were very faith-based or in the church, that there is a complete absence of education around dating and relationships. I'm sorry, guys, I left my window open and there's a plane going by. Around relationships and dating. There's no education. There's no preparation, right? Beyond the purity principles of don't have sex, and then the concept around waiting, the wait, like Devin Franklin wrote in his book. And so, but there's zero education around what are you supposed to do as a single woman and preparing her, because honestly, the church hasn't really promoted dating at all. So church girls, and that's who this series is going to be for, is church girls. That's who I'm talking to in this series. You may be able to relate with this content and what I'm going to do in this series of videos if you are somebody who has not really dated. My follower mentioned in the email that she's now 40 plus. She realized she took her 20s and 30s, never learning men, never learning herself, never learning how to date, was just waiting, like in this posture, almost like God's going to just drop a man out of the sky. And what she was expressing is that secular women, secular girls, while the church girls are over here doing nothing and not growing any dating IQ, this is my language, not growing any dating IQ, relationship IQ, men IQ, they're not prepared or equipped, but secular women are studying these things and learning how to do these things. And then they're the ones who are learning and how to vet and qualify men for marriage, so they end up married. And while all of this demographic of church girls tend to be kind of just sitting here perpetually single, serially single, not even knowing what they're doing wrong. And here's another thing she brought up, and this is what I want to touch on. She said, and then, Rebecca, we're not taught because we're so uneducated and ignorant when it comes to men and dating. So the first guy that shows us interest that we halfway like, we think that's supposed to be our husband. We don't have any education tips or IQ of how to navigate or understand that every man that shows you interest isn't necessarily a good guy, or that he's not going to marry you, or doesn't have your best interest at heart, or his intentions are not pure. So men can literally misuse, abuse, and mislead church girls because they can tend to be so naive when it comes to dating, that in your younger years, this is how so many church girls have found themselves so broken and hurt, brokenhearted, now having to get therapy. And by the way, I have a therapy session at 11 o'clock with my therapist, so I only got 20 minutes, y'all. I have my own therapy session. You guys know I promote therapy. So they literally now find themselves in these cycles because they don't know how to vet and date. They then are giving opportunities to the wrong men, not even knowing how to navigate any of that. And now you're having to deal in your 30s and 40s with the recovery, heartbreak recovery, damage recovery, because you didn't know what you were doing, and left to your own devices, you literally just chose all the wrong men. You literally are now finding yourself, and this is what she was saying, at 40 plus, having to learn how to date, having to recover from all of the missteps and lessons from not knowing what you were doing. And she was just speaking to how unfair that is. Stacey King says Heartbreak Hotel. And it's for good men too, because good church girls and good men, like I say all the time, good men and good women all have these things in common, right? You don't know how to do these things. You're out here thinking that everybody just has your good heart. Everyone's out here with good intentions, and you're just out here wide open. And what you can become without realizing it is prey. You're very vulnerable to predators, vulnerable to people with poor intentions who misuse your heart, misuse the benefits of you, all of that treasure that's in your heart and soul for who you are and what you bring to the equation now is used as a weapon against you. All that love, that loving, giving heart that you have is used as a weapon in order to abuse, use, manipulate you. And one of the things, the reason I'm doing the Divine Dating Workshop is because I realize for good-hearted women, that's right, Rebecca says sitting ducks. Literally, sitting ducks. Prey to the predators. And then what she was also mentioning in her email is then you have to do all the recovery from that. So now you're hurt. Your self-esteem is all... First of all, church girls, let me say this to you. Y'all know I'm a preacher's kid. You know I'm a church girl. And what I had to learn is that so often what goes hand in hand with being a church girl is low self-esteem. And we don't see it that way, but because humility is so ingrained into our culture and community as Christians or church girls, this humility stance that we're taught to take about everything literally creates low self-esteem because we know how to believe in God, we know how to believe in others, we know how to believe in everything for everybody else outside of self, but we're never taught our own value. We're never taught that we are valuable and what we bring to the table has to be protected. We're not taught that we are a treasure. We're not taught that people will try to use you and abuse you and misuse you. We haven't been taught to prioritize our own well-being. All you've been taught in the ministry of service, in the model of service, is to serve everyone else, while you yourself, by a certain point in life, by the time you get into your 30s, By the time you get into your 40s, you are now so depleted. I Love Bob Marley says we were taught that other people know what's best for us more than we do. Yes, there is an element of codependency inside of church and religion. I'm just speaking straight up, ladies. There's a level of codependency. There's a level of low self-esteem because we are not taught self-confidence. Self-confidence is arrogance. Self-confidence does not look, it's not humble. It's puffed up. It's vain. It's not of God. When that's not true. Because guess what it takes in order to have boundaries, in order to have healthy boundaries to protect your heart and your mind and protect your peace and your well-being. Boundaries require confidence. Boundaries require self-esteem. So if you are somebody who is wide open, you wear your heart on your sleeve, you're an open book, anyone who comes into contact with you, you don't know how to vet, you don't know how to question who someone is before you give all of your trust. You take people at face value and you jump into things, you believe people when they say things. You don't understand from your heart posture that not everybody is sincere, not everybody's healed, not everybody is leading from a place of love, not everybody is being honest, authentic. So guess what? You go out here into the real world. Stacey King says, I endorse the Boundaries book by Henry Cloud. Phenomenal book. We have that book and recommend it all the time in coaching. Yes, wonderful book. We go out here into the world, and can I speak as a church girl? I got 10 more minutes. As a church girl in my 20s and going into my early 30s, mind you, I'd been married my whole life because I was one of the church girls who married somebody I was just dating because you weren't allowed to be dating, right? So that's the other part of church girls. We commit too fast, jump in too fast. I married the wrong person at only I married the father of my youngest son. We were only together 6 months and I had it annulled because it was a hot mess. Turn around a year later and marry my next husband because I wasn't allowed to date. Let's just be honest about church culture. What's the scripture that we grew up with, ladies? It's better to marry than to burn. Right? So we grew up with a scripture that says, instead of you fornicating, they're using that scripture to say, instead of fornicating, it's better for you to just marry them. Which means practically marrying a stranger if you're pressured to marry somebody that you have not gotten to know and taken the time to date them, whether sex is involved or not. You could have not even been having sex. I wasn't even having sex. And I was pressured to marry him because of the appearance that we were dating and the appearance that we were seeing each other. So then they assume you're having sex. Then the pressure begins to get married. My daddy was a pastor. I'm just saying the pressure I had. I couldn't date. I wasn't allowed to date. I wasn't allowed to be a healthy 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22-year-old. I had to get married. That was the only way you were allowed to date. Date married. Marry them and then you can see each other. So then you make this lifetime commitment to someone you don't even really know. Or you make a commitment to even be in a relationship with someone you don't even really know because you're trying to make it official and committed at least before you're even getting more involved with someone because you're trying to be the good girl, the church girl. So guess what? You overcommit, you commit too fast. Then you feel stuck because you're getting to know somebody after you've already committed, which it means verbally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you've committed to this person. So now you feel like you got to honor that commitment. You already telling people that's your boyfriend, that's your fiance, that's your wife, you're now married. So now guess what? You're locked in. There's no room to say this isn't working for me. You're not a fit for me. I remember distinctly 1 month after I got married, and we stayed married for 10 years. 30 days in to my marriage at 20 years old, the very first month, I remember calling my mother and saying, Mom, I think I made a huge mistake. I think that there's no way we should have done this. I was sitting there thinking, like, how did I even get myself into this situation? And because now we were right around that timeline when you start learning everything about somebody that you didn't know, because we can rush in before that timeline has really elapsed to where you really get to know somebody. I say this all the time. If I would have just dated my ex-husband 90 more days before getting married, I would have never married him, because all this stuff starts to come out that you didn't even know about before you committed. And then you're sitting here like, oh my God, you flunked out of college? I mean, I was just wrapping up my bachelor's degree and you were in trouble, and that's why you came over here to the city where my parents were at? And you what? You ain't got no sense. You ain't got no maturity. You ain't, all kind of stuff start just falling out the closet. And you're sitting here like, what have I gotten myself into? Why? Because the culture is set up to rush in. Sandra says, OMG, I did the same. Guys, I stayed for 10 years, had 2 more sons. I was married all of my adult life up until 31. I was married. I didn't know anything else but to be married. I stayed in that relationship for a decade when I knew from the first 30 days that it wasn't right. We are not compatible. This is not good. And I suffered through that marriage and suffered through that relationship. I did. And then in the meantime, guess what I'm doing? I'm maturing, but I'm also tearing myself down because I'm in an incompatible relationship that I'm trying to make work because I committed prematurely, but now I'm trying to make this thing work so I don't feel like I have failed, because divorce is not of God. And now I've got these children, and now we've got these houses, and now I've got rental property, and now I've got, and it just starts to, and then you're beating yourself up because you can't seem to be happy and you can't seem to make it work. And you're the one who's trying to do all this work to make it work, and you're getting counseling, and you're going to your pastor, and you're doing all these things, and nothing I did would work. Yes, Jen, the shame traps you. When God didn't put that thing together from the very beginning. This man and I were never compatible. I put it together. He and I put it together. God didn't put it together. How do I know? The fruit. That was the biggest drought in my life. It was a decade of drought, a decade of loneliness, a decade of wilderness, a decade of no spiritual growth, a decade of me not operating in my gifts. It was a decade literally that I can look back on and say, what I got out of it was my sons. But guys, there was not a lot of growth. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, there was not a lot of growth. The fruit of that says that wasn't God. And it was only when I hit 30 that I finally was saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. This isn't working. And it was when I became 30, finally decided to get divorced. Going against everything about how I was raised, going against my family, going against the church, going against every principle I had been raised to believe in. I finally made up my mind that my personal peace and my personal joy and my personal mental health and well-being took precedence over this relationship that I should have never gotten into to begin with. And I would have never gotten into it if not for the pressure of my family. What clicked for me to walk away was maturity. Hi, Kendall. What clicked for me was maturity. I finally reached a point in my maturity, my mental maturity, spiritual maturity, professional maturity. I got to be 30 years old, and just some things began to click for me. And I realized, Rebecca, what are you doing? And I began to meet enough people and meet other couples. And I began to realize what mature relationships look like and what healthy marriages look like. And I began to realize this is not what I have. This is not what I'm in. And in that 10 years, he and I put each other through hell. In that 10 years, through hell. He was just the type that he had a lot of trauma around divorce from his parents divorcing when he was younger. So he was the type that would have never left. He would have never left. He was the type that no matter how bad, how miserable, how much he didn't want to admit that we weren't compatible. He didn't want to admit how miserable it was. He didn't want to admit we'd made a mistake. He did not want to own it and admit that, but he would have stayed. We'd still be married to this day, miserable. Miserable. I'm just saying, it's my son's father. I know him, you know. He's remarried now, and I know how he is in that marriage. Talk to his ex-wife a little bit here and there. Talk to his ex-girlfriend here and there. He ain't changed. He's the same today as he was 10 and 15 years ago. He's the same. He gets in the relationship, and he's the type that just doesn't really do a whole lot of work, doesn't go to therapy, doesn't work on self. It's kind of like, it is what it is. What you see is what you get. And I was bumping my head against that wall for 10 years, trying everything the counselor would do, everything the couples counselor would tell us to do. I'm reading the Bible. I'm reading books. I'm trying. Why? Because nobody told me at 18, 19, and 20 not to rush in and commit your life to a stranger. Not to rush in and marry somebody that you don't really know. That a lifetime commitment for marriage is you're literally combining your life with someone legally, financially, emotionally. That has that has to be a wise choice. He was nowhere prepared to be a husband, prepared to be a father. It was a mess. Staying longer in a wrong relationship does not make it right. Monique says, man, I wish I could get my time back. So much time wasted. Man, listen, guys. And I know it hurt him for us to get divorced. It hurt me. It hurt the kids. But I have never looked back. And when I became 30, and I got to get ready to go because I got my therapy session. Part 2, I'm going to talk about when I started dating. And I'm going to talk about how I ended up becoming a dating and relationship coach because of what I began to learn when I had never dated at 30. I had never dated. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know how it works. I didn't understand men. I didn't understand anything. And so part 2, I'm going to explain what did I begin to learn at 30 as a church girl? What did I begin to learn, right? I'm going to talk about dating and relationships when you have a church girl mindset and when it comes to dating and what has to change in order for you to learn how to date healthy and date intuitive. In the meantime, make sure you sign up for the Divine Dating Workshop that's coming. You want to make sure you get in there with me so we can really talk about the actual nuts and bolts and tools of exactly how to date. We're going to talk about everything in that workshop, guys. I'm going to teach you how to date as a spiritual woman, how to date. Okay, so make sure you get on the wait list for the Divine Dating Workshop. Enrollment's going to open soon. All right. All right, I love you. That's going to be inside the workshop, Amma. How long should you date someone before committing to marry them? That's going to be in the workshop. Make sure you sign up to get on the wait list for the workshop. All right, I love you guys. Blessings and abundance. Oh, Certified Abundant Life Coaches. For those of you who want to be a Certified Abundant Life Coach, Enrollment is open. Class starts June 6th, so we start in less than 30 days. Make sure you get in your deposits for tuition. We have a brand new landing page coming for that with enrollment advisors that you'll be able to talk to answer your questions. But if you want to become a certified life coach, make sure you click the link in my bio and send us an email or send in your application, and we'll follow up with you to get you some more information so you can make sure you get in class for June 6th. How can one get the link? In my bio. Click the link in my bio here on Instagram and YouTube, guys, to click the link for the classes. All right. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.